John O'Naylor.
It's my understanding, Mr Speaker, that National will be taking a party vote on this matter, just by way of clarification. Firstly, Mr Speaker, I was heartened by the speech from Mr Henare over there, who decided he wanted to bring a little levity into the debate. The only thing I thought that he missed, though, was to thank the ladies in the kitchen for putting on the spread. And then we would have had the complete rugby speech. I know it's a little sexist, but it was the last time I heard that speech was back in the 1980s when, not rightly or wrongly, that was an acceptable thing to say. Though, of course, now we would now be thanking the people in the kitchen for putting on the spread. Mr Speaker, I want to focus, if I may, not so much on the nuts and bolts of this bill, but focus a little bit on the why, as to why it is that we're doing this today, why it is that we're passing this legislation. And of course it is because of New Zealanders' passion for sport, and in particular the game of rugby football. Now, if you ever wanted to doubt, if anyone was to ever doubt how passionate people in New Zealand are about the sport or about the All Blacks as a team, you only need to wander around town the morning after an All Black loss to realise and understand just how important this is to the people of New Zealand. In fact, even if, not that it happens very often, Mr Speaker, but it has on occasion happened that there are the All Black losses. And I do remember on occasion even going into a church service on a Sunday morning when you would expect people to be lively and full of enthusiasm as they normally would be on a Sunday morning, and the mood is still somewhat dampened from the night before on those rare occasions of an All Black loss. We also see just how excited people get also when there is a great result and people are wandering around town and shopkeepers will tell you that they sell more on a Monday after an All Black win and all that kind of thing. It even gets so serious, in fact, when New Zealanders are watching the rugby, that I can distinctly remember during the 2011 Rugby World Cup being at some friend's house. Half-time came around, and as our tradition would be to sit down and have dessert at lunchtime in the dessert at lunchtime is always good. Have dessert in the middle of the game, and no one was in the mood to eat at half-time in the last Rugby World Cup. Such was the tension, such was the raw tension that there was in the room, that people felt the anxiety about what may occur. So New Zealanders are absolutely keen, they're absolutely passionate about seeing their All Black team perform. Now, as it's come to pass over time in New Zealand's history, that the idea of just gathering around a TV set in anybody's home to watch the game is something that not everybody can avail themselves of, because with the advent of paid TV, of course, not everybody has paid television, and so not everybody has the opportunity to sit down in front of their 16-inch screen, as we did back when I was younger. It's a long time ago that we were sitting around a 16-inch screen, but I can tell you it did happen. And so not everybody has the access and the ability to be able to do that. It's something that we need to move forward on. Now, I heard that in the first reading there was, I can't remember who it was exactly, from the Labour Party suggesting that it was the government's responsibility to ensure that all the rugby would go on free to air, and that was the way that we would fix this. And I guess the difficulty with that, while it's a nice idea, ultimately the taxpayers are going to have to pay for that. And while New Zealanders on the whole are very passionate about rugby, I guess it wouldn't necessarily be fair on those people who don't want to watch it to have to pay for it. And I don't think we'd quite get that sort of legislation through in the time frame that we are able to get this legislation through now. So, of course, the alternate for people watching these games, if they've got friends with Sky, that's great, they can go there perhaps and watch it if they don't have Sky, but is to go to a public place and watch it. And that, for some people, is a preferred way of doing it, and for some people, it will be the only way that they are able to watch Rugby World Cup games live during this current Rugby World Cup. Now, there are occasions too when people are out of town. I know when New Zealand played Argentina in the first game for the first time in the Rugby Championship. We were in Queenstown. What did we do? We went down to the local pub, took the kids down there for breakfast or lunch or whatever it was that was the time of the day. We all sat around and watched the game. A great opportunity, easy to do. I know of some people too that at the moment that's the only way they can watch the game. They're not big drinkers, but they'll go, they'll sit down, they'll have a lemonade or a hot chocolate or whatever it is in a licensed premise and watch the game. Because the difficulty is that there aren't any, well, many anyway, other places that you can watch it in a public setting that aren't licensed. That's what moves, I guess, to the point of needing to adjust these liquor laws. I think if there were a whole lot of freely available fan zones or otherwise that people could go and watch the game for free and not have to go to a liquor licence, that would be something that people go. But that is not something that is easy to put together at 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning in the same way that it was when the games were hosted here. And so, Mr. Speaker, making those places available to people, I think, is the most pragmatic solution to ensure that New Zealanders can go and watch those games. There are these moments that people want to enjoy. A lot of people can tell you where they were at Rugby World Cup 2014, and I can recall actually going back to 1983. It wasn't a rugby game. Pardon me? 2011, thank you. People might remember that as well. But 1983, actually watching a cricket game of all things, on holiday with my parents. We were at Mount Cook, and my dad took me into the pub at Mount Cook. I was only 17, don't know if it was legal at the time, but anyway, we went and watched New Zealand chase down 297 runs. Richard Hadley, Jeremy Coney, full flight. It was a fantastic game, one that will stick in my brain forever. Actually, interestingly enough, everybody in the bar stopped to watch the game, except for the two German tourists who were sitting in the corner and wondered what was going on. It got to the point where actually the barman was only serving drinks between overs because he was wanting to watch the game. Those are the sorts of situations and memories that people can have when we have legislation like this that allows them to go to these places to watch. Now, Mr. Speaker, it was a really critical thing that we needed to do and weighing up all of this excitement about the rugby, all of this excitement about people being able to go and watch games, trying to weigh that up, as other speakers have said, with the trying to reconcile that, I guess, with the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act and the principles behind that in terms of harm minimisation. And it is something that the committee took very seriously and gave really serious consideration to. It's not something that was at all taken lightly, and something that we put, as I say, a lot of energy into. And I guess on balance, we've got to look at this and we've got to say, we can't just work off the presumption that just because someone is going to a licensed premise at 4 o'clock in the morning to watch a game of rugby, they are necessarily going to be engaged in excessive alcohol intake, that they're necessarily going to have bad behaviour. We can't just assume that everybody's going to be drinking at all, because clearly some people will want to go simply to watch the game. But bearing in mind that the provisions of the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act do work around that harm minimisation, we've looked to where we can stick to the spirit of that Act, or as my colleague on the other side of the House, David Parker, would refer to, it's the vibe of the Act that we want to incorporate. We want to make sure that we're not encouraging people to act beyond what is responsible or otherwise. So, Mr. Speaker, we have put in place some things to mitigate, if you like, against particularly the disturbance of neighbours in the area. So there's going to be, as Mr. Mitchell said, no ability to discard your empty bottles in the middle of the night if you're a bar owner. We're going to keep the noise down by not having amplified music or use of the outdoor courtyard areas, because we want to make sure that this is an event, these series of events that are in fact friendly to communities. Mr. Speaker, I'm looking forward to to discussing this further when we get to the third reading of the bill later on this evening, but I'm pretty sure that this is going to be a good bill for New Zealand. It's going to ensure that we can actually enjoy our national game, and I certainly hope that it's going to result in a very good outcome as well. Thank you.